The hexagram states, when thunder rolls across the world, things are devoid of deceit. Book of Changes, hexagram of unforeseen events. The Ming Dynasty work records of celestial changes chronicles a mysterious explosion that occurred on the 6th day of the 5th month in the 6th year of the Tianqi era at Wanggong Factory in the southwestern corner of Beijing. The text recounts, suddenly, a roar akin to thunder approached from the northeast, surging towards the southwestern corner of the capital, with clouds of ash rising in buildings. Shaking in an instant, a great tremor erupted, as if heaven and earth were collapsing, cloaking the surroundings in darkness, and countless homes lay in ruins. From Shunqingmen Street in the east to Xingbu Street in the north, and extending to the south of Ping's Gate, an area spanning 3 or 4 li, and encompassing 13 li, around was reduced to dust, with tens of thousands of structures and people affected. The cause of this explosion has long been attributed to the gunpowder stored at Wanggong Factory. Subsequent estimations suggest that the explosion's power equated to between 10,000 and 20,000 tons of TNT, while the total quantity of gunpowder stored at the factory barely amounted to several tens of thousands of gene. Are you the one known as Fang Ziye? Lift your head. The voice of Xie Xianshun, the chief of the Jinyui, was low and ethereal, as if emanating from a deep well. Fang Ziye felt a surge of irritation within, yet he dutifully raised his head and replied, I am indeed Fang Ziye. Surrounding him were many individuals, all of whom were mid to high-ranking officials of the Jinyui. Their scrutinizing gazes unsettled Fang Ziye. As a newly minted nobody, he was uncertain why this notorious figure, known for his cruelty, had summoned him. Typically, when Xie Xianshun sought someone out, it was rarely for benevolent purposes. Xie Xianshun paused before stating, I have reviewed your report, yet I have further inquiries. Yes, I shall disclose all I know. Are you acquainted with Tang Wenya? The mention of this name sent a jolt through Fang Ziye's heart. He bowed respectfully, striving to maintain his composure as he responded, reporting to you, my lord, Tang Wenya and I were both students at the Martial Arts Academy. I transported supplies to Shitangzi last October, but prior to that, I was unaware that he was responsible for the matter concerning heavenly thunder. Have you witnessed heavenly thunder? The sun hung in the sky like a fiery orb, with not a whisper of wind, that a few long-dead trees were half buried in sand. If they were not buried, they would surely ignite. Though it was already deep autumn in October, people in Beijing would typically don their padded jackets. Yet here, the oppressive heat persisted due to the stillness. It was said that while the days were sweltering, the nights turned frigid, thus the local adage, wearing fur in the morning and gauze in the afternoon, huddling by the stove while eating watermelon, aptly described this region. Why was this location chosen? Fang Ziye dismounted from the camel, adjusted his headscarf, and took a sip from his water flask. This place was west of Suzhou Guard, known as Shitangzi. As the name suggests, the surrounding area was a desert for hundreds of miles, with scattered oases. This region, bordering the lands of the Tatar, Tumute, and Turpan, had once been plagued by bandits over a century ago, and mere decades prior, it had witnessed battles between the armies of the Ming Dynasty and the Khan of the Mongols. However, ever since the Khan was granted the title of Shuni Wang and ceased to be a threat, this area had fallen into neglect. It is hardly surprising that this place is nothing but sand. When the war concluded, no one remained. Fang Ziye kicked at the sand with his leather boots, sending a plume of grains soaring into the air. Beneath the sand lay a desiccated bone. Its origins unknown, whether it belonged to a human or a warhorse was a mystery. After nearly a century of relentless conflict, the number of souls that perished in this sandy expanse surely exceeds 100,000 anywhere one digs. A bone is likely to emerge. He could not fathom why the Martial Arts Academy would establish the Thunder Division in such a desolate location. Although the Tatar threat had diminished, the desert remained a haven for bandits. The distance from the Suzhou garrison was considerable. Should any trouble arise, the station troops would be unable to provide assistance. Moreover, the Suzhou garrison struggled with self-sufficiency, relying on the Shaanxi district to supply provisions, which necessitated special escorts at considerable inconvenience. The sole advantage of this desolate place might be its ability to keep secrets. Fang Ziye gazed melancholically at the bone, contemplating the life of its former owner. His lips felt parched, as if ablaze, and he intended to take another sip when a voice suddenly pierced the air. Lord Wan. He lifted his head. The scorching sun caused the ground to shimmer, distorting the very objects before him. Amidst the haze, a figure clad in a white robe approached him. The robe draped down to the feet, and the head was wrapped in white cloth, creating an oddly eerie appearance. The individual was of modest height, and perhaps due to the heat, their voice had a slight sharpness to it. He stepped forward and said, "I am Fang Ziye. Honored to meet you, Lord Tang." The figure in white halted, surveying the caravan behind Fang Ziye before glancing at him, suddenly breaking into a smile. "Blue-eyed one, it is you." Fang Ziye, possessing an unusual appearance with striking blue eyes reminiscent of the Hu people, had earned the nickname Blue-Eyed One that only his colleagues at the Martial Arts Academy referred to him in such a playful manner they were all his seniors. Fang Ziye hesitated, uncertain of how to respond, when a figure in white unveiled their face, saying, "It is I, Tang Wenye." Revealed was a youthful visage, a delicate oval face with a fair complexion that seemed to starkly contrast the surrounding desolation. A wave of dizziness washed over him. The sight of her radiant smile was utterly unexpected. He murmured, "Tang Wenye, is it truly you?" Tang Wenye's father was an elder of the Martial Arts Academy, who had perished in the line of duty. Although she was merely a year older than Fang Ziye, she had been a student at the academy since the age of 5, having studied there for a decade by the time he arrived. He vividly recalled his first day at the academy, encountering her rather stern countenance in the classroom, leaving him quite astonished. He had heard the adage that boys and girls part ways at the age of 7, yet discovering a 15-year-old girl at the academy, unbound by foot binding and holding a status equal to that of her male peers, had truly opened his eyes. However, Tang Wenye officially joined the Wugong Academy in her second year, after which there was no further news of her. Just as he was about to forget that name, he was unexpectedly reminded that the Lord Tang mentioned in Tianqi was none other than Tang Wenye herself. Tang Wenye said, "Of course it's me. What of Lord Wang?" Fang Ziye replied, "My master is otherwise engaged with official matters and could not be present. Hence, I am responsible for the transportation of supplies this time, Lord." "Lord Tang." Tang Wenye was taken aback and inquired, "Lord Wang has matters to attend to?" As she pondered this, the leader of the caravan behind her urged, "Lord Fang, hurry and unload the cargo. It's sweltering outside." Before Fang Ziye could respond, Tang Wenye suddenly said, "Yes. Old Yin, come out and unload the goods." She turned to Fang Ziye and flashed a smile, saying, "By Yinner, you've worked hard. Please step inside for a cup of tea." Fang Ziye followed Tang Wenye into the small dwelling. It was a modest oasis, merely an acre or two, with a few houses nearly filling the expanse. Tang Wenye poured a cup of tea and offered it to Fang Ziye, asking, "What urgent matter prevents Lord Wang from being here?" The Lord Wang she referred to as Wang Jingxiang, the deputy commander of the Wugong Academy. Among the 3 deputy commanders, Wang Jingxiang held the second rank, and Fang Ziye was his beloved disciple. Given the gravity of the situation, it was unprecedented for Fang Ziye to substitute for Wang Jingxiang in delivering supplies to Tianqi. Fang Ziye explained, "My master was commanded to travel afar and could not spare the time to come." After a moment of contemplation, he surveyed the surroundings and inquired, "Lord Tang, what is the purpose of this place?" Tang Wenye remained silent for a moment, then smiled faintly, taking a sip of tea before replying, "The Annihilation Thunder." Fang Ziye raised his head slowly and remarked, "I have encountered the Annihilation Thunder once." Su Xianchun immediately perked up, resting his hands on the armrest of his chair, leaning slightly forward and asking, "In Tianqi?" "Indeed." Fang Ziye hesitated slightly, but continued fluently. At that time, Lord Tang Wenye was a member of the Thunder Division at the Wugong Academy, tasked with developing the Annihilation Thunder in Tianqi, and I had the opportunity to catch a glimpse. What was the true task you were assigned at that time? Fang Ziye's heart raced, though his expression remained composed. He replied, "According to the second clause of the Wugong Academy's regulations, the Wugong Academy no longer exists." Su Xianchun interjected irritably, "You are now under the command of the Jinyui. The first clause of the Jinyui's regulations is loyalty to the emperor and service to the nation, which you surely do not forget." "I remember," Fang Ziye acknowledged. "Then what was the task you were assigned at that time?" Fang Ziye lowered his head, stating, "Due to the Thunder Division's prolonged failure to develop the Annihilation Thunder, I was commanded to investigate whether Lord Tang Wenye was concealing anything." "Why do you suspect that Tang Wanyin is concealing something?" Fang Ziye felt a chill creeping down his spine, yet he remained steadfast, stating, "Because on July 13th of the 5th year of the Tianqi era, the guards of Suzhou reported an earthquake at Tianqi, where the night appeared as bright as day, an unusual phenomenon. Consequently, the Martial Arts Academy suspects that the thunder eradication has succeeded, yet Tang Wanyin seems to be withholding information." "What is thunder eradication?" Tang Wanyin merely smiled, refraining from answering, and instead posed a question, Are you so eager to learn about thunder eradication? I have perused some documents that detail the origins of the Thunder Department. However, upon reading them, I found it exceedingly hard to believe. Tang Wanyan rose from her seat and retrieved a white cloth robe from a nearby cabinet, presenting it to Fang Ziye, saying, "Put this on, Bai Yan. The hood could be pulled down to cover your face." This robe, complete with a hood, was quite substantial, nearly akin to a padded coat. Fang Ziye remarked in surprise, "Why is this robe so heavy?" As Tang Wanyan was draping the hood over her face, she responded to his inquiry, "This garment is layered, with a coating of lead powder inside." Lead powder? Fang Ziye frowned. A glimmer of mischief flashed in Tang Wanyan's eyes as she replied, "Aren't you curious to see thunder eradication? I shall take you to see it. However, the Thunderstone is quite peculiar without this attire. You wouldn't even know how you perished." Thunderstone? Without answering, Tang Wanyan lit a torch and pushed open a door in the wall. The door appeared to be an ordinary wooden one, yet it felt exceedingly heavy as it swung open. Beyond it lay a passage leading underground, significantly cooler than the sweltering heat outside. Fang Ziye hesitated, saying, "Master Tang, do not refer to me as Master." Tang Wanyan turned her head, a hint of mockery in her gaze. "Although I hold the nominal title of 100 households, as a woman, you know that it is merely a ceremonial position." Despite having covered her face, Fang Ziye felt a flush rising to his cheeks. When he first met Tang Wanyan, she was taciturn to the point of being peculiar. He did not expect her to be so eloquent now. He wished to inquire further, but Tang Wanyan had already descended, compelling him to follow closely behind. The passageway was wide, flanked by walls of stone. After traversing 2 doors, the darkness deepened. The torch in Tang Wanyan's hand illuminated only a small area ahead. Upon pushing open the 3rd door, Tang Wanyan finally paused, declaring, "Behold, that is thunder eradication." In the dim light of the torch, Fang Ziye discerned a platform within, upon which rested a square lead box. This box was not large, roughly the size of an ordinary inkstone, and about 2 inches thick. As Fang Ziye leaned in for a closer look, Tang Wanyan grasped his arm firmly, warning, "Be cautious, do not approach too closely, the Thunderstone is perilous." So small, the Thunderstone must weigh perhaps only a few pounds? Fang Ziye estimated internally, feeling confident in his assessment. He looked up at Tang Wanyan, only to find a subtle smirk in her eyes. "It weighs 15 pounds, she murmured as if to herself, "and this is merely half of thunder eradication. Was the complete thunder eradication 30 pounds? Fang Ziye recalled that the newly cast red cannons required 10 pounds for the projectile and 7 pounds for the powder combined. They were only slightly more than half of thunder eradication. It seemed that the power of thunder eradication was indeed formidable. He sighed, "I never realized it was so heavy. Its power must be immense, right?" He merely voiced a casual observation, but Tang Wanyan laughed lightly, as if she had heard something absurd. "Among the firearms you've encountered, which possesses the greatest power?" Fang Ziye pondered for a moment and replied, "It should be the red E cannon." "The red E cannon indeed wields considerable might," Tang Wanyan remarked, her eyes glinting with a subtle mockery. "If the Tianqi were to succeed, then the red E cannon would be akin to a child's slingshot. It wouldn't even measure up to that. At best, it would be comparable to a handful of dirt thrown by a child." The Florentine cannon, the Tiger Squat cannon, and the Red E cannon were all formidable instruments that enabled the Ming Dynasty's divine machinery to triumph. Fang Ziye had previously witnessed a test firing of the Red E cannon. Its thunderous roar and ability to reduce a target to dust left a profound impression on him. He had also heard that the Red E cannon was the most powerful weapon in the world. Even in Europe, the mightiest cannons were merely on par with it. Yet in Tang Wanyan's words, the Red E cannon, when compared to the Tianqi, was deemed inferior to a child's toy. This revelation suggested that the power of the Tianqi far surpassed his imagination. He inquired, "What exactly is the Tianqi, and how powerful is it?" The mockery in Tang Wanyan's eyes vanished, replaced by a look of confusion. She murmured, "I cannot ascertain what it truly is, perhaps." She gazed at the ceiling of the cave as if trying to pierce through the thick earth to glimpse the sky. "Perhaps it can only be described as God's final judgment." This was a phrase recorded in the Bible, revered by the scholars of the heavenly doctrine. The term heavenly doctrine refers to the Catholicism that was introduced to China during the Ming Dynasty. Many within the Martial Arts Academy were adherents of the heavenly doctrine. Fang Ziye's teacher, Wanggong from the 3rd Command, was one such scholar, as was Tang Wanyan. Fang Ziye recalled how every Sunday, he would see Tang Wanyan attending church with her teacher, while he himself never became a scholar of the heavenly doctrine. He looked at Tang Wenya with a sense of admiration. A woman of her caliber, in an ordinary family, would merely be a sheltered young lady. Yet Tang Wenya possessed an insight into matters that belied her youth, exhibiting a maturity far beyond her years. Though Fang Ziye was not a scholar of the heavenly doctrine, he had studied Latin using the Bible as a textbook during his time at the Martial Arts Academy and understood the meaning of the final judgment. That he gasped, "Is its power truly that great?" Tang Wenya replied, "We should leave. Although it is contained within a lead box, remaining here for too long is still perilous. More than 10 individuals have already perished because of the Mietian Lei." She turned and started walking away, with Fang Ziye following closely behind. Once they exited the cellar, Tang Wenya firmly shut the door and poured Fang Ziye a cup of tea, saying, "Rinse your mouth and spit it out. Do not swallow it." "What exactly is the thunder of extinction?" After pulling aside the veiling cloth and spitting out a mouthful of water, Fang Ziye eagerly inquired. Tang Wenya's had already settled down and replied, "On June 29th in the 46th year of the Wanli era, a soldier named Ling Kuei from the Suzhou garrison reported to the governor of Gansu that at noon, a sound akin to cannon fire emanated from the northeastern sky above Ningyuan Fortress, proceeding westward. The Red Cliff Fortress experienced a second occurrence, resonating like thunder. This incident was duly noted in the diary of Lord Qi. Although Qi Guangzong, the governor of Gansu, was not a scholar of celestial phenomena, he maintained close relations with them and had even penned a preface for Matteo Ricci's map of the world. Fang Ziye had heard of this name and previously came across an excerpt from Qi Guangzong's diary in the archives. He remarked, "This must have been an ordinary earthquake." "The reports do mention an earthquake," Tang Wenya's acknowledged. However, at that time, Ling Kuei had brought back a survivor who spoke of an entirely different matter. After taking another sip of tea, she paused like a storyteller. Unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Fang Ziye pressed, "What did that person say?" "Thunderstones." Tang Wenya's gently swirled her cup, observing the tea leaves dance within, and said softly, "What they discovered were indeed thunderstones." This event transpired in the 46th year of the Wanli era. On that fateful June 29th, a 5-man cavalry patrol stationed at Ningyuan Fortress set out eastward on their routine inspection. Ningyuan Fortress lay at the northern foothills of the Chilean Mountains, precisely at the intersection of the territories of the Dada, Turpan, and the Ming Dynasty. It served as a crucial thoroughfare for the Dada heading north. Thus, despite its remote location, its importance could not be disregarded. Ningyuan Fortress was situated just west of Tianqi, which they were entering. Shielded by the Chilean mountains from the humid southern winds, the area around Tianqi was rendered increasingly desolate and arid, receiving scant rainfall throughout the year, where even patches of camel thorn could be deemed an oasis. Due to its isolation, even among the soldiers, the duty at Ningyuan Fortress was considered a grueling task. At the end of June, the northwestern region was engulfed in sweltering heat. After patrolling over 20 miles around Ningyuan Fortress, the 5 men found themselves utterly exhausted, with both men and horses fatigued. Just as they were about to return, an unfortunate incident occurred. The horses' shoes shattered simultaneously. It is not uncommon for horseshoes to break over time, however. It was indeed a stroke of misfortune that all 5 horses lost their shoes at once. And at that moment, despair. Horseshoes at Ningyuan Fortress had already been depleted, leaving them with no choice but to return to forge new ones. The Suzhou area lacked well-maintained roads, and the paths were strewn with gravel and stones, causing delays in their discovery, resulting in 3 of the horses sustaining injuries from the sharp stones, rendering it impossible to return without assistance. Fortunately, horseshoes are not particularly difficult to forge with an anvil, a furnace, and a skilled blacksmith. They could be crafted with relative ease. Among the 5 sentinels, 1 hailed from a blacksmithing background. However, since each horse's hoof had a unique shape, it was essential to forge and attach the horseshoes on site. After deliberation, they resolved to remove intact horseshoes from other horses to assemble a complete set for 1 horse, dispatching 1 man to hastily return for tools and iron, and to forge anew, intending to regroup at Ningyuan Fortress. Thus, back and forth, the day dragged on, enduring a full day in the wild one might perish from thirst or succumb to the sun's relentless rays. Fortunately, a sentinel fortuitously discovered a cave nestled at the base of a small mountain, a mere offshoot of the vast Chilean mountain range that stretches for miles. The cave, though not particularly spacious, was ample enough to accommodate 4 men and their horses. Consequently, the group led their steeds into the cave, preparing to take refuge for the night. Upon entering the cave, one of the sentinels unexpectedly noticed a hard object embedded in the wall, remarkably soft to the touch, yielding marks even when struck with a stone. And it was easily excavated. This object was exceedingly heavy, about the size of a pigeon's egg, yet weighed several pounds to their knowledge. Such substantial weight and size could only denote either lead or gold. During the Wanli era, mining taxes flourished across the nation as people excavated for gold and silver. And although these soldiers were illiterate, they had heard tales of substantial gold nuggets unearthed among the gravel. In their excitement, they scoured the cave thoroughly and discovered several more pieces, all of a yellowish-brown hue, indicative of a heavy metal. The question loomed, were these indeed gold? After considerable debate, they concluded that these items could not be lead, as lead has a bitter taste, while these pieces possessed a faint sweetness when licked with a color distinctly different from that of lead, leading them to the realization that they were indeed gold. The total weight of the gold nuggets amounted to approximately 30 to 40 pounds. Divided among the 5 men, each would receive between 6 to 8 pounds. During the Wanli period, the exchange rate for gold to silver fluctuated between 7 to 8.6 pounds of gold could be traded for 7 to 800 taels of silver, and at that time, 1 tael of silver could procure 2 shi of rice, rendering 7 to 800 taels sufficient to elevate one to the status of a modest, wealthy individual, especially considering that the monthly stipend for border soldiers was merely 9 cash. The allure was undeniably substantial, yet since the Hongwu era, the Ming Dynasty had strictly prohibited private gold mining, and any offenders would be prosecuted for theft. Thus, the 5 sentinels resolved to keep their discovery a secret to prevent any personal division. They decided to melt the gold into a single ingot, intending to share it equally once their service on the border was complete. The 5 agreed to delegate one among them, Lin Tuxiu, to ride back to Niyuan Fort and retrieve necessary supplies, while the others awaited his return in the cave. Trusting in the arrangement, Lin Tuxiu mounted his horse and departed. However, after riding for little more than 10 miles, as the distant silhouette of Niyuan Fort came into view, he suddenly felt the ground tremble, causing his mount to stumble and throw him to the earth, as if an invisible giant had delivered a forceful push against his back. When Lin Tuxiu turned to look, he beheld a towering plume of black smoke rising ominously in the distance, resembling a colossal black mushroom. Like a black fungus, it must be a sign from the heavens, Lin Tuxiu remarked. This column of smoke seemed to emerge from a nightmarish vision, an occurrence he had never even contemplated in his 26 years of life. Judging by the distance, it was precisely where the 4 men had sought refuge in the cave. Unbeknownst to him, he could not fathom how the 4 had conjured such a smoke cloud. The area around Tianqi was typically devoid of wind, yet now he was besieged by a howling gale, the shrill wind sounding as if it sought to sever his ears, while the earth beneath him continued to quake, causing even the small stones to dance as if animated. The bizarre scene appeared to Lin Tuxiu, who had never encountered such sights before, akin to plunging into a nightmarish abyss. Unconsciously, he let out a shrill cry, so loud that he could not even hear himself until blood streamed from his ears. The trembling persisted for an extended duration before finally subsiding. When Lin Tuxiu regained his senses, half of the sky had darkened. This was not due to the encroaching night. They had set out early in the morning, and it was only just past noon. The sky darkened because a mass of ominous clouds was gradually expanding, obscuring half of the heavens. The wind continued to howl, though it had diminished considerably, blowing in a searing heat, while ominous rain clouds threatened to unleash their fury. The sandy terrain in this area rarely witnessed rainfall, with only a handful of showers throughout the year, yet when it did rain, the roads would become a treacherous quagmire, rendering passage nearly impossible. Realizing the predicament he was in, Lin Tuxiu cast aside his fear and mounted his horse, galloping back. However, he was unable to make it in time. When he was still 3 or 4 miles from Niyuan Fort, a torrential downpour began. This deluge was mixed with an abundance of black ash, staining his clothes a deep black. Perhaps it was the presence of this ash in the clouds that rendered the sky ominously dark, making the day indistinguishable from the depths of night. By the time Lin Tuxiu staggered back to Niyuan Fort, he could scarcely stand. He lay there for an entire day. On the following morning, Lin Tuxiu felt utterly exhausted, his forehead burning with fever, still unable to rise, and even his horse had succumbed to illness. When soldiers dispatched by Li Yingkuei from Fengsu Prefecture arrived 2 days later to investigate, they found Lin Tuxiu lying in a pit, a once robust man, now reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. Although the earthquake had occurred far from Su Prefecture, Its tremors were felt even there. Upon inquiry, Lin Tuxiu stammered out the sequence of events, attributing their misfortune to the greed of the five of them and declaring it divine retribution. Due to his grave condition, the soldiers prepared to escort him back to Su Prefecture for treatment. Given the extraordinary nature of the earthquake, Lianke would likely not believe the report as it stood, necessitating that Lin Tuxiu explain the circumstances himself. Yet, his health was so deteriorated that, upon leaving Ming Yuan Fort and reaching the vicinity of the cave they had previously discovered, he succumbed to his illness. Where there had once been a small hill standing over 10 zhang tall, the earthquake had leveled it to the ground. The soldiers, taken aback, had no choice but to bury Lin Tuxius' remains on the spot, convinced that it was the consequence of the deaths of the other four comrades. Even though their bodies were lost to time, they would not allow Lin Tuxiu, the sole survivor, to escape. That it suspected that Tang Wenya has successfully developed the thunder-extinguishing lightning, yet chooses to conceal it. Fang Ziye paused and added, "Indeed, my lord, you are perceptive." Xianchun lightly tapped his fingers on the armrest twice. After a moment of contemplation, he remarked, "Why the concealment? If the thunder-extinguishing lightning is a success, the Ministry of Thunder's waste of state resources becomes indefensible. Achieving such a monumental feat would afford Tang Wenya, regardless of her gender, the opportunity for promotion and honor. There is nothing but benefit for her in this. Why would she choose to keep a secret? Could it be that she is a hidden pawn of the slave chieftains?" Fang Ziye replied, "Indeed, my lord, you are astute." A faint smile graced Su Xianchun's lips, perhaps pleased with his precise observation. He remarked, "I have perused the investigation results you provided, yet they raise considerable doubts. The Lay Department has been stationed at Tianqi for over 7 years, during which 3 different groups of personnel have come and gone. Regardless of success or failure, these individuals should have left behind substantial records. However, what you returned with consists merely of trivial accounts and financial entries with scant information concerning the extermination of the heavenly thunder. What could possibly account for this?" Fang Ziye, maintaining his composure, replied, "I suspect that Tang Wenya has destroyed the records." "Why would she do such a thing?" "I cannot say for certain." Su Xianchun's expression darkened sharply as he demanded, "Are you truly unaware?" "Indeed, I am." Fang Ziye's demeanor remained unchanged. "I suspect that Tang Wenya has discerned my true intentions." "Did you inadvertently reveal your motives?" Su Xianchun pondered aloud. Given her exceptional intellect, it is highly plausible that she has detected inconsistencies in your words. After a moment of contemplation, Su Xianchun inquired, "What then could be her reason for concealing this matter?" Fang Ziye hesitated slightly before responding. "I believe Tang Wenya has learned of Inspector Yang's imprisonment." "Yang Lian?" Su Xianchun was taken aback. What connection does Yang Lian have with Tang Wenya? Tang Wenya, having lost her father at a young age, had a close bond with Inspector Yang, who had entrusted her to the Wugong Academy following her father's passing. Inspector Yang Lian of the Censorate was imprisoned in July of the 5th year of the Tianqi era for impeaching the 9,000 years for abusing power. The responsibility for this matter lay with none other than Su Xianchun, a confidant of the 9,000 years, and Yang Lian was confined at the Beijing. Su Xianchun, incensed by this revelation, exclaimed, "Fang Ziye, Tang Wenya has been at Tianqi. How could she possibly know about Yang Lian's imprisonment? Did you inform her?" "It must have been me." Fang Ziye interjected hastily before Su Xianchun could unleash his fury. "When I went to Tianqi, I was unaware that I was to meet Tang Wenya, nor did I know of her connection to Yang Lian." Before Su Xianchun could respond, Fang Ziye's words left him momentarily speechless. He exhaled deeply and asked, "Upon learning of Yang Lian's situation, did she incinerate all those documents?" "Most likely," Fang Ziye affirmed. "But she concealed it remarkably, while I had failed to detect any discrepancies, leading to this unfortunate outcome." Su Xianchun fell silent for a while before questioning, "Did she reveal nothing to you?" "Nothing at all." Fang Ziye contemplated silently. "No, she had spoken, she had shared much. Are you still listening?" Tang Wenya chided gently, noticing Fang Ziye's distraction. Her eloquence may not have been exceptional, yet her voice was melodious and clear, akin to a nightingale's first song, captivating Fang Ziye's attention. In truth, he had already familiarized himself with the details of the matter from the records, which were even more comprehensive than what Tang Wenya had conveyed. As she playfully reproached him, he chuckled awkwardly and replied, "I am listening, I am." What happened next? Upon receiving this information from Lord Qi, the Martial Arts Institute expressed great interest. On June 29th, the Institute's seismograph detected tremors from the west. However, this earthquake was peculiar in that it bore no aftershocks, resembling more an explosion caused by gunpowder. Consequently, in February of the 47th year of the Wanli era, Brother Feng Ziye proposed to conduct an on-site investigation at Tianqi. Tang Wenya gestured towards the door and remarked, "In recent years, a thick layer of sand has accumulated here, rendering it unrecognizable." When Brother Feng visited, this area had a depression of about 10 feet, resembling the bottom of a pot, with the sand underneath turned black, and a particular spot was even centered into a glass-like state. After 7 days of meticulous examination, Brother Feng and several colleagues concluded that this was not an ordinary earthquake, but rather an explosion. Fang Ziye hesitated and inquired, "Was it caused by thunderstones?" Tang Wenya took another sip of tea and smiled. "Indeed." However, at that time, Brother Feng was unaware of thunderstones. He employed a rudimentary method by choosing that concave area, intersecting two paths to locate the explosion's epicenter, and commenced excavation from that center outward. His fortune was remarkable, as within a day of digging, he unearthed several swords and knives, melted into a mass of scrap iron, confirming that this was indeed the cave mentioned by Lin Tuxiu, where the 4 guards had sought refuge. Yet he remained oblivious to how those 4 had instigated such a massive explosion. Hence, Brother Feng continued to dig, hoping to discover the exceedingly heavy object described by Lin Tuxiu, convinced that the explosion was intimately connected to it. Fang Ziye asked, "Did he find it?" Tang Wenya shook her head. "He found nothing. It was originally a small hill, now leveled, leaving only a stone platform, making it even harder to locate. Brother Feng hired laborers to dig for 2 months, yet yielded no results. He remained undeterred and wished to continue excavating, but the laborers suddenly fell ill, with most experiencing nausea and hair loss. They believed it to be a divine curse for their sacrilege, and after 2 succumbed, they all fled in panic. Though Brother Feng dismissed such superstitions, his own health deteriorated, forcing him to return. Unfortunately, upon his return to the Martial Arts Institute, medicinal remedies proved ineffective, and he passed away 2 months later, marking the first investigation a failure. At that time, Fang Ziye had not yet entered the Martial Arts Institute and was unaware of these events. Upon his arrival, he only heard of the heavy losses suffered by the institute. With many lives lost, this was one reason for his exceptional admission as a student, seemingly. Related to what Tang Wenya had mentioned, he remarked, "This matter is not yet resolved, is it?" Tang Wenya replied, "Indeed." Before his death, Brother Feng wrote to Commander Yao, requesting additional personnel to thoroughly investigate this matter. He meticulously detailed the sequence of events, coining the term Thunderstone. Although he found nothing, he had unraveled the threads of the case, and his contributions paved the way for future success. In response to Brother Feng's request, Lord Yao promptly engaged Mr. Hu to address this issue. The Mr. Hu referred to by Tang Wenyi is a European missionary. Fang Ziye had heard mention of this individual from his Latin teacher, Latino, but the details surrounding him remained vague until now, when it was revealed that he too was tasked with uncovering the truth regarding the lay stone. Fang Ziye inquired, "What has Mr. Hu discovered?" Tang Wenyi replied, "Mr. Hu has not managed to clarify matters. However, he did ascertain that the affliction suffered by Senior Brother Feng and the others was indeed caused by the lay stone, which can only be remedied by lead." Regrettably, despite his findings, Mr. Hu could not evade the calamity himself and fell ill as well. Out of the 3 who accompanied him, 2 perished, while 1 managed to escape before the symptoms manifested, thus preserving his life, albeit rendered a shell of a man due to extensive decay. He paused momentarily before continuing. Afterward, the 4 of us, myself, Senior Brother Wu, Senior Brother Qian, and Senior Brother Zhen were assigned to this place to continue our investigation. Fang Ziye exhaled in relief, saying, "At least you have uncovered the truth." Yet a flicker of anguish crossed Tang Wenyi's face as he responded, "Though we have gained clarity, the cost has been exorbitant." The 4 of us came together, and after much deliberation, we concluded that the lay stone, originally embedded in the cave walls, must have been reduced to dust following the explosion. Thus, we employed a gold panning technique, sifting through the gravel at the pit's base, hopeful for a yield. Here, devoid of rivers, water had to be transported, rendering the task arduous beyond measure. What we extracted were peculiar metallic powders, interspersed with various impurities. We exhausted every method, employing magnets to attract iron filings and mercury to extract copper dust, yet we could not procure pure lay stone. Ultimately, Senior Brother Wu devised a brilliant approach and succeeded in isolating the lay stone, but the final conundrum remained: how to smelt it. Fang Ziye queried, "Is it not possible to smelt it directly?" Tang Wei's expression gleamed with a hint of pride as he replied, "Naturally not. I conceive a method that effortlessly fused the ley stone powder into a cohesive mass." However, we were soon faced with another dilemma. The ley stone emits a phosphorescent glow, and without lead containment, contact with it could prove fatal. Senior Brother Wu, during one smelting session, inadvertently allowed a spark to breach his robe, resulting in his veins bursting within 4 to 5 days, with his hair falling out entirely. He struggled for 2 days before succumbing. Fang Ziye shivered at the thought. "Are you all still remaining here?" "Indeed," Tang Wei responded nonchalantly. "From the very first day of joining the Martial Arts Institute, I prepared myself to sacrifice my life. Moreover, with the ley stone matter beginning to take shape, we cannot abandon our pursuit." After Senior Brother Wu's tragedy, we exercised heightened caution, and in the subsequent 6 months, only one laborer met a similar fate. Yet as we refined the ley stone, its quantity increased, while the means to induce an explosion remained elusive. We attempted ignition, striking and dry distillation, yet the ley stone proved almost akin to lead, utterly resistant to detonation. Following repeated failures, Senior Brother Qian speculated that we might be misguided, suggesting that the explosion attributed to the ley stone was merely Senior Brother Feng's conjecture, as he had never truly witnessed it. Master Qian suggested that the explosion might have no relation to the Thunderstone, but rather stem from another cause. However, Brother Zhan believed that the Thunderstone was indeed perilous, capable of causing harm invisibly. Brother Feng's conjecture was undoubtedly correct. We simply had yet to uncover the precise method that could trigger the Thunderstone's explosion. At this juncture, Tang Wen sipped her tea and recounted, "7 months ago, I led a few individuals to wash sand as usual. While we were engrossed in our task, a sudden scream erupted from within the house. Alarmed, I rushed inside. Upon entering, I was met with the acrid stench of charred flesh. Brother Zhan lay sprawled on the ground, his arms scorched as if by fierce flames. While Master Qian's palm had turned to cinders, there was no one else present, though 2 pieces of Thunderstone remained on the table. Brother Qian still had a breath left in him. After I revived him, he recounted that Brother Zhan, while tinkering with the Thunderstone, had a sudden inspiration. He mused that since we could not discover how to make the Thunderstone explode, perhaps we should consider how the 4 guards had approached it. Brother Zhan surmised that, believing they had found pieces of gold, they might have intended to combine them into a single mass. That way, Fang Ziye interjected, with only 4 of them, they could reduce the portion shared with Lin Tuxiu, allowing each to receive a larger share. Tang Wen, surprised, turned to Fang Ziye and murmured, "So, you're quite clever after all." Indeed, the Thunderstone possesses a peculiar trait. Once the total weight exceeds 30 pounds, it begins to emit light and heat, impervious even to lead. In that moment, the 4 guards must have succumbed to greed, attempting to conceal a portion of it, sharing only part with Lin Tuxiu. Thus, the concealed portion would be divided among the 4, allowing them to gain more. They had not anticipated that the Thunderstone could be so unruly as to provoke an explosion that on that fateful day, Brother Zhen also inadvertently pressed 2 pieces of Thunderstone together, only to have them immediately radiate heat and light, resulting in his tragic demise. Fortunately, Brother Qian was nearby and managed to pull the 2 pieces apart, averting a catastrophe. Realizing this brought clarity, and I thought that the annihilation of the thunder was imminent. However, I never expected. Her slender brows knitted together, and a flicker of pain danced at her gaze. "Let's speak of something else," she said, forcing a smile that failed to reach her eyes. "Do you recall when you first arrived at the Martial Arts Academy? Your arrogant demeanor made everyone want to bully you." She concealed her true feelings. Fang Ziye pondered this but couldn't help but chuckle. "I was truly afraid of you back then. Seeing you reminded me of the 2 starving dogs, Ada and Ayer. Ada and Ayer were 2 ferocious mastiffs kept by the academy. The students both feared and despised them, and at that time, Fang Ziye found Tang Wenya's equally insufferable." Suddenly, Tang Wenya's burst into laughter, her smile illuminating the room and intoxicating Fang Ziye like fine wine. "You've changed quite a bit since then. You were like a hedgehog, always ready to fight. Lord Wang had to apologize on your behalf more times than I can count, and I never expected you to have matured so well now." Before Fang Ziye, the image of his former self seemed to materialize once more. He chuckled awkwardly and remarked, "Regardless of the circumstances, you have certainly become a remarkable talent. The creation of the Annihilation Thunder is no small feat. It may well earn you an official position, and you could eventually be hailed alongside Qin Liangyu as a paragon of feminine prowess." Generally speaking, women were seldom granted official titles. Although Tang Wenyao held the nominal title of 100 households, she had no actual duties, and the salary for such a position was considerably less than that of others. However, exceptions did exist. For instance, Qin Liangyu, the female chieftain of the Shizhu clan, was appointed as the deputy commander and chief general for quelling the rebellion of Shi Chongming. Should Tang Wenyao truly succeed in crafting the Annihilation Thunder, her chances of receiving an official title would not be impossible, given the precedent set by Qin Liangyu. Tang Wenyao smiled and replied, "You truly hold me in high regard." Is that what Lord Wang said? Indeed, Fang Ziye was about to deliver another jest when he suddenly noticed the somber expression that had overtaken Tang Wenyao's face, darkening it significantly. Taken aback, he inquired, "Have I said something amiss?" Tang Wenyao replied, "It's nothing." She glanced out the window and added, "Dinner is ready, let us eat." The provisions had been unloaded, and the meal was prepared. Though the ingredients were not particularly fresh, the dishes were presented with considerable finesse. As night fell, the desert sunset resembled a scene from the sea, with ripples undulating across the flat sands, while in the distance, the snow-capped Chilean mountains offered a refreshing sight. Yet, Fang Ziye found no pleasure in the meal, uncertain of what he had consumed. After dining, Tang Wenyao grew noticeably aloof towards Fang Ziye, instructing them to retire for the night. What did she say? Su Xianshun leaned forward, seemingly eager to draw closer to Fang Ziye. Fang Ziye replied, "Tang Wenyao once mentioned to me that the power of the Thunderstone never quite meets its expected target, though she was unsure where the fault lay. Is that all?" Su Xianshun did not attempt to conceal his disappointment. Fang Ziye nodded. "That is all. Tang Wenyao conveyed to me that, in truth, the Annihilation Thunder remains unsuccessful. Is that so?" A piercing cold light suddenly ignited in Su Xianshun's eyes. "Is it truly so?" Fang Ziye felt an unusual dryness in his throat, accompanied by a stabbing pain in his heart. He murmured, "Yes. That is merely her assertion, is it not?" Su Xianshun's voice grew increasingly frigid. "You do not believe it." Fang Ziye found himself at a loss for words, simply whispering, yes, he felt as though he were being ground beneath a heavy stone, slowly being squeezed dry. Coercion was Su Xianshun's forte, although he did not resort to torture. The sharpness of his words made Fang Ziye feel as though he were ensnared beneath a blade. "You met Tang Wenyao when you were both students at the Martial Arts Academy. What sort of person do you perceive her to be?" Astoundingly intelligent, proud, and aloof, Fang Ziye carefully selected his words. It was only now that he realized how unfamiliar he truly was with Tang Wenyao. When had he first encountered her? It felt like an eternity ago. Indeed, it had been quite some time. "Why do you engage in fighting, blue-eyed?" The young girl, with a slightly childish expression, gazed at the boy before her. A small bruise marred the corner of his brow, yet he defiantly held his head high, remaining silent. According to the third rule of the Martial Arts Academy, one must not engage in selfish brawls. Violators will face severe punishment. "You have already joined the academy, have you forgotten this?" The boy continued to remain mute, his azure eyes resembling a tranquil autumn lake, devoid of tears. "You shall forego your meals today, and are prohibited from returning to your quarters. Stand here until you acknowledge your mistake before you are allowed to leave." The girl stood her ground before the boy, who towered over her by half a head, unwavering in her stance, the silver cross hung from her neck, glinting with a ghostly light in the moonlit night. The dream shattered. Fang Ziye suddenly sat upright, the images from his dream vivid before him. It had been a considerable time since then. It was shortly after he had entered the Martial Arts Academy, when a fellow student mocked his blue eyes, leading Fang Ziye to engage in a brawl. The other boy, confident in his larger and stronger physique, underestimated Fang Ziye, who had trained in martial arts since childhood. Even adults were no match for him. The boy, intending to bully him, ended up with a bruised face. Engaging in fights was one of the 7 prohibitions of the academy, yet Fang Ziye was unconcerned, as the boy dared not report the incident. After the fight, Fang Ziye felt much lighter in spirit, but was soon confronted by Tang Wenyao on his way back to his quarters. Although his fists could fell adults, he dared not strike this proud and aloof girl. Stubbornly, he refused to admit his wrongdoing, resulting in Tang Wenyao punishing him to stand at the entrance for an entire night. It was an autumn night, the air turning cold, and despite shivering from the chill, Fang Ziye stood resolute, unwilling to concede. Even the boy he had fought for pity's sake pleaded with Tang Wenyao on his behalf. Yet she remained unyielding until Fang Ziye, hungry, cold, and exhausted, collapsed onto the ground. He rose from his bed. In the desert, the disparity between day and night was stark. Daylight was scorching, while the night felt like late autumn. It was Fang Ziye's first night in the desert. and he felt parched beyond measure. He fumbled on the table for the teapot and took a sip from its spout. The icy water cascaded down like a thread, soothing his agitated heart somewhat. Suddenly, he lifted his head and walked towards the door. There were sounds outside. He pushed the door open. As the door creaked ajar, moonlight flooded in like water. The stillness of the day gave way to a gentle breeze at night, the tranquil desert resembling a reserved stranger, stretching towards the horizon. A white silhouette stood 100 paces from the house. It was Tang Wenyet. Fang Ziye gently closed the door behind him and walked forward. Tang Wenyet sat upon a stone, gazing at the moonlight on the horizon. Unlike during the day, she was adorned in a plain long dress, quietly tending to her long hair. Around her neck hung the cross that her father had bequeathed to her. Such attire was typically reserved for times of mourning. Fang Ziye approached her side, but Tang Wenyet did not turn. She merely spoke softly. "Bai Yin'er, tell me, what has transpired in the court?" Her voice had taken on an air of indifference. Fang Ziye recalled how many years ago Tang Wenyet had inquired of him in a similar tone whether he had been fighting. Though her appearance had changed considerably, her voice remained unchanged from that time. Fang Ziye averted his gaze and mumbled, "Nothing has happened." Tang Wenyet turned her head to fix her gaze upon his eyes, causing Fang Ziye to awkwardly look away. After a moment, she sighed gently and said, "Bai Yin'er, you are still the same, unable to meet my eyes when you lie. Tell me, what has truly happened in the court?" Fang Ziye felt as though he were on the brink of despair. The Tang Wenyet who had once instilled both fear and hatred in him seemed to stand before him once more. He whispered, "Yuan Yu sure. Lord Yang Lian has been imprisoned." Tang Wenyet lowered her head in silence. Inspector Yang Lian of the Censorate was Tang Wenyet's adoptive father and a supporter of the establishment of the Thunder Division within the military academy. After a long pause, she murmured, "The Thunder Division has, in fact, been disbanded, hasn't it?" In the first year of the Tianqi era, the court appointed Xiong Tingbai as the Minister of War and Deputy Chief of the Censorate, overseeing Liaodong. However, in the following year, Xiong Tingbai was imprisoned due to military defeat, placing the Thunder Division in a precarious position. Originally established at the behest of Xiong Tingbai, the Thunder Division had been stationed at Shitangzi for 3 years, incurring substantial costs due to the long distance. Transport of necessary resources. The faction of Juqiansu had repeatedly attacked, alleging that the military academy was lavishly squandering resources, leading to a depleted treasury. Fang Ziye understood that while the military academy had indeed expended considerable resources, it was far from the extent of depleting the treasury. The faction of Juqiansu merely used this as a pretext to eliminate the military academy as a wing of the Donglian. In the past, figures like Yang Lian had provided protection, but now that Yang Lian himself had been imprisoned, the Thunder Division had lost its final bastion of support and was naturally destined for disbandment. Fang Ziye suddenly felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. "Yes, when I arrived, Commander Tian of the Jinui had just issued the order to disband the military academy and merge it with the Jinui. They likely dispatched you because we were both students of the military academy, hoping to instill trust in me toward you." Fang Ziye remained silent. Although there had been no explicit instructions to this effect, the deliberate omission of Tang Wenyet's name in connection with the garrison at Shitangzi, only mentioning the need to confirm the progress of the development of the Thunderbolt, implied as much that he still could not comprehend how Tang Wenyet had discerned the flaw. Perhaps it was merely a slip of the tongue or an inadvertent gesture on his part. "What is your true mission?" Fang Ziye exhaled heavily and replied, "I am to ascertain whether the Thunderbolt has been successfully developed. The earthquake on July 13th is highly suspicious, as the reports from the Suzhou garrison bear a striking resemblance to the one on June 29th during the 46th year of Wanli. If you ascertain that the annihilating thunder has indeed succeeded, and it is I who have concealed this information, will you then take me back by force?" Tang Wenyet's voice bore a peculiar strength, and Fang Ziye felt an overwhelming pressure approaching. He replied softly, "Yes." After a brief pause, he added, "How did you come to this conclusion?" Tang Wenyet smiled, yet her smile was tinged with profound bitterness. "Lord Wang once confided in me that the annihilating thunder is a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few. Even if it were successful, we would remain in the shadows." He also mentioned that any supplies would be delivered personally by him, ensuring that the convoy would be trustworthy, and he would send prior notice through a feathered message. If there comes a day when he does not arrive, it signifies a change in circumstances. She lifted her gaze to Fang Ziye and, after a moment of silence, inquired, "I simply did not anticipate that it would be you who came. Whose orders do you follow?" Fang Ziye could no longer raise his head in that instant. He felt as though he had reverted to a student of the Martial Arts Academy, facing Tang Wenya's reprimand. He murmured, "It is Lord Luo." The Lord Luo he referred to as Luo Bixia, the right commander among the three at the Martial Arts Academy, known for his close ties to the faction of Jiu Qiansui and his long-standing discord with Wang Jingxiang. Tang Wenya sighed, no wonder. Last year, when Uncle Yang submitted the impeachment against Jiu Qiansui, I anticipated that this day would come. In June of the fourth year of the Tianqi era, Yang Lian submitted a memorial accusing Jiu Qiansui of 24 grave offenses, leading to a significant decline in the power of Jiu Qiansui's faction. Yet in the end, Jiu Qiansui was not toppled, and a year later, the retaliation began. Fang Ziye suddenly lifted his head, exclaiming, "Wenya, regardless of who ascends to power, we ultimately strive for the benefit of our nation." "Do not say any more," Tang Wenya interjected, gazing at the crescent moon in the sky. When Lord Jiangling founded the Martial Arts Academy, he inscribed 4 characters: a prosperous nation and a strong people. I have grown up in the Martial Arts Academy, absorbing only reverence for the divine and the notion of sacrificing oneself for the nation. But what does this nation truly represent? A prosperous nation and a strong people ultimately amount to nothing. The Martial Arts Academy was established by Zhang Jujing in the 7th year of the Wanli era. Although Zhang Jujing has long since passed and his reputation tarnished, the Academy continues to hold him in high esteem, never speaking his name outright. Fang Ziye remarked, "However, if the Annihilating Thunder succeeds, the situation in Liao will be resolved, ultimately benefiting the nation." "Why do you choose to conceal this?" "Beneficial to the nation?" Tang Wenya replied with a bitter smile. She lowered her gaze to her flowing white gown trailing on the ground and murmured, "You have guessed correctly, the Annihilating Thunder has indeed succeeded. Yet, I did not foresee that its power would exceed my wildest imagination, that I prepared 2 Annihilating Thunders using the refined Thunderstones, with the first test scheduled for the 13th of July. When the 2 stones, weighing over 30 pounds combined, collide, an explosion will occur. Fearing failure, I placed both devices within a cannon, igniting them with gunpowder to trigger the collision and subsequent detonation. That early morning before dawn broke, I ventured alone into the desert. Although I had secured 2 Thunderstones in a lead box, trepidation gripped me, for I feared the slightest misstep. Her voice grew softer and more feeble as she spoke. Fang Ziye gazed at her in a daze, rendered speechless. Tang Wenya brushed a stray lock of hair away from her forehead and recounted, "After walking northwest for over 5 miles, I suddenly heard distant voices raised in song. It was a group of Tatar herdsmen gathered around a fire, roasting their catch. Fearing that the Thunderstones might harm them, I veered northward, retreating another mile or so. By that point, I had entered the Turpan region, devoid of human presence. Even if those herdsmen had heard the sound, they would have been unaware of its significance. I placed the Thunderstone upon the ground and ignited it, then hurried back on my camel. I had used a slow fuse, which took an hour to burn through, ample time for me to return. Just as I arrived, the Thunderstone exploded. She lifted her gaze, tears brimming in her eyes, and said, "Biner, do you know, upon witnessing that golden fireball rise from nearly 10 miles away, fear consumed me. The power of the Thunderstone surpassed my wildest imagination. That fireball ascended higher than the Chilean mountains. Once the black clouds dispersed, I rushed to inspect the aftermath, only to find that the explosion had reduced everything within a 2-mile radius to mere dust." She paused momentarily before continuing, "Including those herdsmen. They had been feasting by the fire, perhaps even strumming a lute, yet they had become nothing more than shadows imprinted upon the ground-blackened silhouettes, along with their grazing sheep, reduced to indistinct charred remnants." Fang Ziye felt as though he could scarcely draw breath. He exhaled heavily, bitterness coating his mouth. Tang Wenya continued in a hushed tone, "From that day forth, I struggled to sleep for several nights. Whenever I closed my eyes, I envisioned those herdsmen, reveling in their feast, only to be met by a wave of searing heat. They would not have realized what was occurring before their skin was torn asunder like parchment, flesh and bone disintegrating into ashes, blood spurting forth, only to evaporate before it could touch the ground." She abruptly raised her head, declaring, "Since that day, I have pondered the existence of the Thunderstone in this world. Surely, one day, it will annihilate all of humanity. It is no mere weapon, it is far beyond that. No weapon in existence compares to the Thunderstone. It is not meant for mankind, it is the final judgment of the divine. Before the divine, all humanity is culpable, and the Thunderstone seeks to obliterate this world. Our folly lies in attempting to usurp the majesty of the divine, only to bring about our own destruction. This marked the second occasion Tang Wenyao mentioned the final judgment. A gentle breeze stirred, causing her delicate form to sway slightly, reminiscent of the last blossom on a branch, struggling against the wind, on the verge of falling. Fang Ziye was suddenly overcome by a surge of warmth in his heart. He stepped forward impulsively, grasping Tang Wenya's shoulders, and implored, "Wenya, come away with me. Let us forget this world." He was bewildered by his own words. From a young age, he had been taught to sever personal desires and be ever ready to sacrifice himself for the country. Yet, this woman before him evoked a feeling in him that made him wish to protect and cherish her at all costs. If he could return to that fateful night when Tang Wenyao had scolded him, he would readily admit his faults, wishing to spare her any anger. Tang Wenyao trembled slightly, but did not pull away instead. She leaned into Fang Ziye's embrace and smiled. "Where shall we go, my blue-eyed one?" This woman, who had always exuded confidence that made Fang Ziye feel inadequate, revealed a vulnerability akin to that of any ordinary woman. Fang Ziye replied, "Anywhere you wish, Ryukyu, Japan, France, the land of the red-haired people far away, never to return." He spoke lightly, yet his resolve was as steadfast as granite. Tang Wenyao gazed into his azure eyes, tears suddenly welling up in her own. "It is too late, my blue-eyed one, too late." A trace of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, shocking Fang Ziye. "You," he began. "I have swallowed the shattered jade pill," she replied with a faint smile. "It is indeed too late. I sought forgiveness from the gods, but they say that suicide cannot lead to paradise. Yet, in my defiance of their authority, I suppose I am destined for hell. I have unleashed the demon, and I shall return to hell with it." The shattered jade pill was a poison distributed among the members of the Martial Arts Academy. The academy operated under utmost secrecy and, facing constant threats from enemies, had equipped all its members with this poison, embodying the philosophy of preferring a noble demise over a disgraceful capture. Fang Ziye was rendered speechless. Tang Wenyao whispered, "Blue-eyed one, you are a man who values law above life. I never imagined you would one day scorn the law." Then, a mischievous smile flickered across her face, though her voice grew weaker. "Let me share a secret with you. For the moment I laid eyes on you, I was fond of you, which is why that was so particularly harsh. You are indeed heartless." Fang Ziye recalled the words of Commander Yao, the highest authority of the academy, as relayed by his teacher. At that time, he had regarded it as praise and felt secretly proud now. He understood that his heart was not as unyielding as he had believed. He held Tang Wenyao tightly, tears streaming down his face uncontrollably. This was the first time he had wept since reaching adulthood, and perhaps it would be the last. He clung to Tang Wenyao, feeling her delicate and soft form gradually stiffening, growing colder, until he finally let out a heart-wrenching scream. His cries startled the laborers who had been asleep, causing them to rush out in panic, bewildered by the commotion. The wind had ceased without notice. The crescent moon hung like a blade, cold and desolate, casting a silvery glow over the sandy pond and the surrounding miles. Did Tang Wenyao truly take his own life out of fear for failing to create the annihilating thunder? Su Xianshun sighed. Thus, the incident on July 13th of the 5th year of the Tianqi era was indeed nothing more than an earthquake. He could not help but feel a tinge of regret. Had he granted Tang Wenyao a little more time, perhaps the annihilating thunder might have succeeded. However, human calculations often fall short of celestial designs. It seems that sometimes authority does not dictate all outcomes. "Indeed," Fang Ziye replied, his tone remaining calm and unperturbed. "It appears that the annihilating thunder has truly become an insurmountable enigma." Fang Ziye continued, "Reporting to you, my lord, I have heard Tang Wenyao mention that the thunderstone must weigh at least 30 pounds to ignite and explode, otherwise it is rendered ineffective." Su Xianshun suddenly straightened. "Is that so?" "Yes." "Very well. You may return for now." Su Xianshun's surprise. A smile graced his lips, and his tone softened considerably. "Have you had your share of zongzi today? You've worked hard. Bai Yanner take a few days off to celebrate the Dragon Boat Festival properly. To your command." Once Fang Ziye departed, Su Xianshun turned to Luo Bixia. "Do you believe what Bai Yanner has said?" Luo Bixia bowed respectfully before responding. "Though I am not well acquainted with him, Bai Yanner is known for his honesty. He does not speak falsehoods." When he first arrived, Lord Yao remarked on his unyielding heart, noting that even when his teacher was imprisoned, he remained unmoved. Thus, his words cannot be erroneous. However, it appears that the two annihilating thunders are actually one, and we have all been mistaken. and oh wonder we have been unable to make any progress over the past 6 months, it simply would not ignite. The annihilating thunder brought back by Fang Ziye has been kept within the Jinhui, now under the stewardship of Luo Bixia. Over the past 6 months, Luo Bixia has summoned skilled artisans, including several Franciscan missionaries. Despite the widespread belief in the tremendous power of the annihilating thunder, no one has witnessed its true might. They conducted numerous fire tests in open spaces, yet never succeeded, remaining baffled as to how those seemingly unremarkable thunderstones could explode. Out of desperation, they summoned Fang Ziye, who had been dispatched to distant lands, during this year's Dragon Boat Festival for consultation. Although the details remained elusive, Fang Ziye finally disclosed a crucial piece of information. Su Xianshun was elated, exclaiming, "Luo Bixia, hurry and investigate. If we succeed, the matter concerning Liao will be resolved, and you, Luo Bixia, shall be hailed as the foremost hero of Liao. Ha ha ha." His excitement grew, prompting Luo Bixia to bow again. "This is all thanks to your guidance. Lord Su, the title of foremost hero rightfully belongs to you. I implore you, please speak favorably of me before the 9,000 years." The thunderstones brought back by Fang Ziye were stored in the Tianqi Pavilion. The Tianqi Pavilion is a small room at the very heart of the Wugong Academy, originally designated for discussions among the 3 deputy commanders of the Wugong Academy. Though modest in size, it is exceptionally sturdy, said to have been constructed by pouring molten iron into the crevices of stone. The entrance features a massive iron gate weighing several thousand pounds, reputedly impenetrable even by the smallest insects. After the Wugong Academy was incorporated into the Jinhui, it ceased to operate independently, and this headquarters located in Wanggong was taken over by the Jinhui, rendering the Tianqi Pavilion a site of utmost secrecy that a group of individuals arrive at the entrance of the Heavenly Machine Pavilion, where one among them pulled open the iron gate, allowing Su Xianshun and Luo Bixia to change into their garments before ushering them inside and securely closing the door. Ascending to the second floor, they beheld several figures clad in white robes bustling about. Upon noticing Su Xianshun and Luo Bixia's arrival, these individuals set aside their tasks and greeted, "Lord Su, Lord Luo." Luo Bixia interjected, "There is no need for further testing. Those 2 heavenly destruction thunder devices are, in fact, singular. Let's see if they can be combined." 2 white-robed men acknowledged his request and retrieved 2 lead boxes from a corner of the room. After a brief attempt, one exclaimed, "Indeed, this lead box has threads that align perfectly for connection." Luo Bixia, elated, urged quickly join them. Given that only 2 finished products of the heavenly destruction thunder existed, they had consistently utilized just one for experimentation, thus remaining oblivious to the threaded nature of the boxes at long last. The enigma that had perplexed them for over half a year was unveiled, sparking unrestrained joy. However, before he could complete his statement, the 2 joined lead boxes suddenly emitted a sharp sound as their bases simultaneously fell away. The 2 white-robed individuals shouted in alarm, collapsing to the floor as the boxes erupted with brilliant light, akin to the illumination of an exceptionally bright lamp. Accompanied by a hissing sound, the lead boxes began to melt as if engulfed in flames. Su Xianshun gasped in shock, calling out, "Lord Luo! Lord Luo!" He found himself at a loss for words. Luo Bixia felt as though struck by a sudden blow, realizing the gravity of the situation. Without uttering a word, he seized Su Xianshun and dashed towards the window. His exceptional agility allowed him to effortlessly leap through the window, even while carrying another person. The remaining white-robed individuals, lacking his prowess, were paralyzed with fear as the 2 thunderstones on the table grew increasingly radiant, scrambling down the stairs in panic. Yet, the Heavenly Machine Pavilion was sealed with a heavy gate, and the soldiers responsible for operating the mechanism were unaware of the chaos unfolding within. The process to open the gate was cumbersome, resulting in utter confusion. At that moment, a blinding light, more intense than the sun, shot heavenward from the pavilion. "Oh God, forgive me," Fang Ziye murmured as he hurried through the city gate, tracing a cross over his chest. The divine command forbade falsehoods, but did not prohibit withholding certain truths. A bittersweet smile graced his lips. Su Xianshun and Luo Bixia had never encountered the heavenly destruction thunder and were thus unaware of the manipulations applied to the lead boxes, nor did they comprehend that the thunderstones were not ignited by fire to trigger an explosion. Perhaps, as Lord Yao claimed to possess a heart of iron and stone, he was not entirely mistaken. Crying together was preferable to crying alone. Even if the capital faced impending disaster, it was certainly preferable to the fall of the entire world. Having traversed several hundred steps beyond the city gate, the sky abruptly illuminated as if it were midday, accompanied by a thunderous roar from behind, reminiscent of an army. Charging forth, that a fierce wind swept through, like an unstoppable giant, thrusting against his back and sending him tumbling to the ground. He rolled several times before coming to a halt. Rising, Fang Ziye glanced back. In the distance, a fireball ascended from the city of Beijing, a golden orb that seemed alive, continuing to rise and roll. Though the night remained deep, this fireball illuminated the surrounding area for over 10 miles. That must be the celestial destruction thunder. Fang Ziye's heart stirred with excitement. Having heard Tang Wenya speak of its formidable power, he had always perceived it through a veil, but now he was witnessing it firsthand. Though separated by more than 10 miles, the fireball scorched his eyes painfully, yet he remained entranced, unable to look away. The fireball continued to ascend, its hue gradually fading from golden to deep blue, and finally to purple. The initial tumult had subsided into silence. Even the incessant chirping of the summer crickets had ceased, as if they had sunk into a realm of death. The fireball had risen into the sky, reaching an altitude of approximately 2 or 3 miles, its apex piercing the clouds. Now, the fireball grew dimmer, the surrounding light waning, transforming into a mass of black clouds, for which flickers of firelight emerged, resembling a colossal mushroom. Su Xianchun must be utterly petrified, assuming he still draws breath. Fang Ziye mused mischievously in Su Xianchun's mind. The celestial destruction thunder was merely an ordinary fire thunder, albeit with greater power, and he could never have anticipated such earth-shattering might. The fierce winds howled on. The ancient trees just beyond the city gate creaked ominously, as though they might be snapped in two. Fang Ziye reached into his pocket and retrieved a piece of paper, tearing it into shreds and letting the wind carry them away. The fragments danced in the air, cascading to the ground. Fang Ziye took a few steps towards where the paper fell, his thumb moving deftly along the knuckles of his fingers. This was the jewel in the palm algorithm. Fang Ziye's mental calculations were swift. His thumb flitted across his index finger, then swiftly transferred to his middle finger. When it reached the third segment of his little finger, he was struck dumb, as if by lightning. The jewel in the palm is a simple rapid calculation method, capable of computing up to 9,999. He was calculating the power of the celestial destruction thunder, but to his astonishment, the number he arrived at exceeded the algorithm's limits. The power of the celestial destruction thunder surpassed that of 10,000 pounds of gunpowder. More precisely, what he had estimated was merely a fraction. The true might of the celestial destruction thunder could potentially be 100 or even 1,000 times that of 10,000 pounds of gunpowder. Indeed, Tang Wenya had mentioned that when two thunderstones totaling over 30 pounds collided, the greater the impact, the more tremendous the explosion. Su Xianchun must have merely commanded the two stones to be brought together, and their power was already significantly diminished compared to the detonation Tang Wenya had tested at the sand pit. Yet this exceeding estimate left him utterly astounded that the celestial destruction thunder still a weapon? What Tang Wenya unleashed is a nightmare capable of awakening even the dead. Fang Ziye could not help but let out a faint groan, overwhelmed by shock and fear. Wenya, you were right. The world is indeed full of not harbor illusions of challenging divine authority. Let the divine administer judgment. He touched the cross hidden within his garment, contemplating silently. The mushroom-shaped black cloud towered into the sky, enveloping the heavens. The light had gradually vanished, and in the darkness, the black cloud loomed like an insatiable demon, poised to devour all. Yet ultimately, it began to dissipate slowly.